Hello there and welcome back to Space Marine. So this time I thought I would do something a little bit different, in fact a big bit different, because as you can see I am currently going with the Vengeance Launcher for about the 4th time ever in my Space Marine career, and certainly my first time in about a year or so. But there is a very good reason for this particular change in my own habits, and that is because I want to address a question that a lot of people have been asking recently, which is, of course, is the Vengeance Launcher overpowered? Now, as I'm sure you can probably tell, and will continue to tell throughout the course of this video, I am quite abysmal with the weapon. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not very experienced tactical. I do have a lot of hours as a tactical Marine, and I like to think I do have a good idea of what I'm doing, so that is definitely going to be helpful. And also, I have chosen a loadout that complements the Vengeance Launcher extremely well. In this case, rapid deployment and master-crafted grenades. A much maligned loadout, and that is what I want to assess. It's definitely worth noting that this is almost entirely my own personal opinion. I am by no means pretending to know everything about this subject, or indeed about the game itself. There's still a lot to be learned, I'm sure. But I am going to try and be as unbiased and objective as I can be in this, which is one of the reasons why I am indeed using this rather than simply commenting on my experiences against it. So, first things first, it is probably worth considering the strengths, weaknesses and counters of this particular weapon. It is of course a high damage explosive weapon, and as such it is definitely best suited to mid-range, although it can perform quite well at close range simply just by placing the shots a bit closer to you, except that there's a good chance that you'll hurt yourself in that case. But its main weakness really is long range. It is not a hit scan weapon, which means that there is a considerable flight time for its projectiles, which give the targets plenty of time to see them coming and move away or take you out in between shots. But that is where another of its key strengths come in, which is the fact that it shakes the person's targeting and makes them very unlikely to actually hit you, especially if they're using a precision weapon. By its nature, the shots can be detonated in mid-air, which also makes it incredibly strong against assault marines, doubly so by the fact that it is an explosive weapon, which means that it completely negates the impenetrable perk and will do severe damage, especially as they are even squishier than tacticals. 3 solid hits will put them down, but they will be left on very low health after 2. However, that said, when it comes to Devastators, there is a perk available which can help to counter it, which is the Feel No Pain perk, and that does reduce explosive damage and renders the Vengeance Launcher considerably less useful. That said, it is worth noting that this perk is fairly rare, as not many people take advantage of this fact, and it is quite situational. Another strength of the weapon is that it pairs very nicely with master-crafted grenades, as that gives a sort of double 1-2 punch of explosives with quite a large blast radius, and also it does perform very well in conjunction with either the Stalker Bolter or the Melter Gun, both of which serve to reinforce either extreme range or very close range weaknesses of the Vengeance Launcher itself. One definite weakness of the weapon, however, is its very low ammunition count. In fact, you are only given 18 shots standard, and you are forced often to search for ammo after running out completely, especially as the sort of without reloading, just continuous firing of the weapon means that you will run out of ammo quite quickly. However, there is a perk which can negate this by giving you double ammo capacity, but of course that does take up a perk slot, reducing the overall effectiveness of your loadout. However, it is in terms of counters where there start to be problems with the weapon, in terms of it maybe being a bit too strong. For one thing, the entire assault class on the whole, I'm going to go out there and say that this weapon largely counters the entire class, no matter what they are equipped with, simply for the fact that it is so effective against them when they are in mid-air. In fact, no other weapon in the game can really compete, as you have a large blast radius, and that definitely helps with hitting fast-moving targets. You don't even need to score direct hits, you will still do very bad damage and negate their impenetrable perk. But it doesn't stop there. As I mentioned previously, the fact that it shakes the screen for the target that you are firing at, that makes it very effective against precision weapons like las cannons, stalker bolters, plasma guns, all this sort of thing. They will very much struggle to actually return fire, giving them only the option of either retreating or getting, well, killed in a blaze of fire. In addition to this, seeking cover is rarely a defense, because the Vengeance Launcher charges can be detonated in doorways to hit targets that are concealed around corners, which gives the Vengeance Launcher user a great advantage over non-explosive weapons. In terms of counters to the Vengeance Launcher, there are in fact very few. You could argue that the plasma cannon does pretty well in this capacity, as the Devastator's increased health capacity will usually allow them to win a shootout between a Vengeance Launcher and plasma cannon, but the very fact that a Vengeance Launcher will often be coming with 1 or 2 mastercrafted grenades makes this matchup, again, very difficult. So that's a bit of a problem really, because there is no real hard counter to the Vengeance Launcher. There are some fairly situational counters, such as melter guns, and perhaps long-range sniper weapons like las cannons and stalker bolters, but again those have to fire at long range where the Vengeance Launcher can't land successive hits on them, which will hamper their ability to return fire. It doesn't end there either. The next point I want to address is the skill cap of the weapon. Every weapon in Space Marine has a certain limitation, as in just about any game actually, is that you can only take a weapon so far in terms of skill before the weapon itself becomes a limitation. Weapons like the las cannon and stalker bolter have perhaps the highest skill cap in the game, because it is almost entirely dependent on the user's ability to place the shots, and these are largely uninfluenced by the target's movement or evasions or anything like that. Now there are weapons which have a lower skill cap, mostly explosive and area of effect weapons like the plasma cannon and the melter gun, neither of which require a great deal of aiming, and indeed in the case of the plasma cannon, scatter will often see your well-placed shot go completely awry, so there's a large degree of randomness there, and of course with the melter gun, it's quite hard to miss targets that close, and you'll do extreme damage just by firing in their direction. The Vengeance Launcher is a little different to other explosive weapons, because although there is a large area of effect, precise timing is indeed required to achieve the most damage against your target. So not only is the weapon extremely effective for new players and those who have little experience with the weapon, it is also only going to get more effective as the user becomes better and learns to time the shots perfectly, especially in regards to assault marines. Overall, this means that as a player gets more experience, the weapon scales with them. So eventually they become extremely powerful and among the most dangerous enemies in the game. As I'm sure most of you will have seen, you can have a very high level of skill with the Vengeance Launcher, which is a big problem for just about anyone that they have to fight. It is very difficult to outplay because of its screen shaking capacities and high damage, especially at medium range, although it does have some weaknesses in terms of close range and long range. Although a good Vengeance Launcher will find a way past the close range difficulties. So overall, what sort of picture do we have of the Vengeance Launcher? It's an explosive weapon, which means that it's quite accessible for new players, because not a whole lot of aiming is required to begin with, although that can scale very well as the player gets better. It has no real counters in terms of other weapons attacking it, and in fact it counters a large number of them, including just about the entirety of the Assault Marine class. So in light of all that, I would have to conclude that the Vengeance Launcher is indeed somewhat overpowered. By no means game-breaking though, because it does have a number of weaknesses and it is quite reliant on other weapons and perks to actually fill some of its more glaring weak points, such as close range and extreme long range. Although remember that this is of course just my own opinion, and I'd be very interested to hear yours actually. Do leave a comment if you agree or disagree, or simply have other views entirely on the Vengeance Launcher as a weapon. Do not hesitate to tell me if you think I am wrong, but please do tell me exactly why you think so, and we can maybe have a bit of a discussion about it. But that is all for now. I think I've rambled on quite long enough. Do leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe to see more content. And as always, I will see you on the battlefield.